The alarm started screaming before sunrise. Deep beneath the prison world of Karen 9, massive steel gates slammed shut one after another. Red warning lights flashed through the underground corridors like rivers of blood. Every guard on duty was running. Not away from a prisoner. Away from a human. The security monitors showed the same unbelievable image on every screen. A single man stood in the center of Cell Zone Omega, the deadliest containment sector in the galaxy. And around him, the monsters were kneeling. 24 hours earlier, nobody would have believed such a thing was possible. 24 hours earlier, the human had been sentenced to die. His name was Marcus Kane. The Galactic Dominion called him a terrorist. The outer colonies called him a hero. For nearly 10 years, Marcus had led human resistance forces against Dominion expansion. He had destroyed warships, liberated settlements, and embarrassed powerful admirals. The Dominion wanted him gone. Not executed. Not publicly. They wanted him erased. So they chose a punishment worse than death. They locked him inside Omega. The pit. A place built for creatures too dangerous to exist anywhere else. Creatures that could tear armored vehicles apart. Creatures that could survive plasma weapons. Creatures that had wiped out entire colonies before being captured. Nobody survived Omega. Nobody. The prison commander, Overseer Vaughn, watched Marcus through a reinforced observation window. Vaughn was a tall reptilian alien whose species had ruled prisons for centuries. He folded his arms. Any final words, human? Marcus looked at him calmly. He showed no fear. No anger. No panic. Only curiosity. Marcus glanced toward the giant blast door that separated him from Omega. Then he smiled. Yeah. Vaughn frowned. Marcus nodded toward the door. Make sure they feed your monsters. Several guards laughed. Vaughn did not. The human's confidence bothered him. Open the gate. Warning sirens echoed through the corridor. Massive locking mechanisms disengaged. The blast door slowly rose. A terrible roar exploded from the darkness beyond. Even the guards stepped back. Omega was enormous. A vast underground wilderness filled with rocks, caverns, and artificial jungles. It was designed to contain dozens of apex predators from hundreds of worlds. The smell alone was enough to make most species sick. Marcus stepped forward. The door closed behind him. And he disappeared into the darkness. The guards immediately started placing bets. Some said he would last an hour. Others gave him 10 minutes. One optimistic guard guessed 2 hours. Nobody guessed longer. The first monster found him within minutes. Security cameras tracked the creature moving through the jungle. A razorback stalker. 8 feet tall. 4 arms. Enough strength to rip open a military transport. The creature spotted Marcus near a stream. It charged. The guards leaned closer to their screens. Everyone expected blood. Instead, Marcus stood still. The stalker reached him. Then something strange happened. The creature stopped. Not completely. Just enough to hesitate. Marcus slowly raised one hand. The monster growled. The human said something. The cameras had no audio. Nobody knew what he said. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the stalker backed away. The control room fell silent. What just happened? One guard whispered. No one had an answer. But that was only the beginning. Because during the next 24 hours, every monster in Omega would find Marcus Kane. And by the time the prison understood what was happening, the pit would belong to him. The control room stayed quiet long after the razorback stalker walked away. Nobody understood what they had seen. Overseer Vaughn replayed the footage 3 times. The result never changed. The monster had approached. The human had spoken. And the creature had left. That was impossible. The razorback stalker was not intelligent enough for negotiation. It reacted to movement, territory, and hunger. Scientists had spent years studying the species. Nothing in their records explained this behavior. Maybe it wasn't hungry, one guard suggested. Vaughn narrowed his eyes. Then explain what happens next. He pointed at another monitor. The stalker was following Marcus. Not attacking. Following. Like a hunting beast trailing its pack leader. The room grew silent again. Meanwhile, deep inside Omega, Marcus continued walking. He wasn't surprised. Back on Earth, before the war, he had spent years working with dangerous animals in remote conservation zones. Wolves, bears, giant reptiles, and creatures genetically engineered for hostile environments. Most people thought survival was about strength. Marcus knew better. Survival was about understanding behavior. Every creature wanted something. Food. Safety. Territory. Respect. Fear usually made things worse. The razorback stalker wasn't hunting when it found him. It was testing him. Marcus had recognized the signs immediately. The raised posture. The warning growls. The hesitation. It had expected panic. Instead, Marcus had shown confidence. To the creature, that meant something. Now it followed him through the jungle. By sunset, they encountered a second monster. This one was far more dangerous. The cameras identified it as a cragmore. A massive predator covered in dark scales and armored plates. The creature emerged from a cave and immediately noticed the stalker. The two monsters hated each other. Records showed they had fought several times before. The cragmore roared. The stalker answered. Both prepared to charge. The guards in the control room finally relaxed. At least this made sense. The monsters would kill each other. The human would get caught in the middle. Problem solved. Instead, Marcus stepped between them. Several guards nearly fell out of their chairs. What is he doing? The cragmore lowered its head. The stalker growled behind Marcus. For a moment it looked like the human would be crushed. Then Marcus did something even crazier. He sat down. Right there. Between two apex predators. The cameras zoomed in. Marcus slowly removed a food container from his prison pack. The Dominion had given him enough supplies for only a few days. He broke the ration into pieces. One piece he tossed toward the stalker. Another toward the cragmore. The monsters stared. Then they ate. Neither attacked. Neither moved. The control room watched in disbelief. Hours passed. Darkness covered Omega. By midnight, the impossible had become reality. The stalker and cragmore were lying near Marcus's campfire. Sleeping. Near him. Not hunting him. Not threatening him. Protecting him. Overseer Vaughn finally stood. Increase observation teams. A guard looked nervous. Sir, do you believe he's controlling them? Vaughn shook his head. No. But even he didn't sound convinced. The next morning brought worse news. Much worse. The surveillance network tracked movement across multiple sectors. More creatures were approaching Marcus. Not attacking. Approaching. A winged night shrieker descended from the cliffs. A six-legged thorn beast emerged from the eastern jungle. Even a massive ironhide burrower surfaced from underground tunnels. Predators that normally avoided one another were gathering in the same location. And somehow, none of them were fighting. At the center of the growing group sat Marcus Kane. Talking. Watching. Learning. The monsters surrounded him in a rough circle. Like warriors gathered around a chief. One nervous technician finally spoke the thought everyone feared. What if the human survives? Vaughn stared at the monitor. The answer worried him far more than the question. Because for the first time in Omega's history, survival wasn't the problem. The problem was what Marcus was becoming. And every hour that passed, more monsters were choosing to stand beside him. By the second day, Omega no longer looked like a prison. It looked like a kingdom. The surveillance cameras showed Marcus moving through the wilderness with an escort of monsters around him. The razorback stalker walked at his side. The cragmore followed behind. Above them, the night shrieker circled through the cavern skies like a watchful guardian. The sight made every prison official uneasy. Predators from different worlds were cooperating. That had never happened before. Omega had been designed around one simple truth: monsters fought monsters. The entire containment system depended on it. If the creatures united, the prison itself could become vulnerable. Overseer Vaughn knew that. And now he was beginning to suspect something even worse. The monsters were not merely tolerating Marcus. They trusted him. The evidence appeared throughout the day. When the thorn beast injured one of its legs while crossing rocky terrain, Marcus treated the wound using supplies from abandoned emergency stations. When the night shrieker became trapped between collapsed support beams, Marcus organized several creatures to free it. Every action strengthened his position. Every success made the monsters more loyal. By evening, even species that normally attacked anything nearby were gathering around him peacefully. The guards watched in disbelief. One technician shook his head. It makes no sense. Another nodded. Maybe humans have some kind of biological ability. No. The voice came from Vaughn. Everyone looked toward him. The overseer stared at the screens. For the first time, he thought he understood what was happening. It isn't a special ability. The room remained silent. Vaughn pointed at Marcus. He's doing what leaders do. The words felt dangerous even as he spoke them. Marcus wasn't dominating the creatures. He wasn't frightening them. He wasn't controlling them. He was helping them. Protecting them. Earning their trust. The realization sent a chill through the room. Because true leadership was harder to defeat than fear. Far below, Marcus had discovered something disturbing. Omega was far worse than he had expected. Many of the creatures carried scars. Not battle scars. Prison scars. Old injuries caused by neglect. Broken containment systems. Insufficient food distribution. Poor medical treatment. The Dominion had locked these beings away and forgotten them. To the government, they were simply dangerous animals. Disposable assets. Marcus saw something different. He saw living creatures abandoned by the galaxy. And that made him angry. Late that night, the largest monster in Omega finally appeared. The cameras immediately focused on the movement. Every guard recognized it. The Titan. A creature so dangerous that entire sectors had been built around containing it. Nearly 40 feet tall. Covered in black armor like scales. Its strength was legendary. 3 military divisions had been destroyed during its capture. The Titan emerged from a massive cave and slowly approached Marcus's camp. Every other creature became nervous. Several backed away. Even the Cragmore lowered itself submissively. The Titan was the undisputed ruler of Omega. Until now. Marcus stood as the giant beast approached. The distance between them closed. 30 meters. 20. 10. The control room held its breath. One strike would kill him instantly. The Titan stopped directly in front of Marcus. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the enormous creature lowered its head. The room exploded with shocked voices. No way. Impossible. It bowed. Marcus reached out and placed a hand against the monster's armored face. The Titan remained still. Calm. Accepting. As if acknowledging a new leader. Overseer Vaughn felt genuine fear for the first time. Because the human now had something more powerful than survival. More powerful than strength. More powerful than weapons. He had loyalty. And when the prison's warning systems suddenly detected failures across multiple containment sectors, Vaughn realized the nightmare was only beginning. Something in Omega was changing. Something far bigger than one human prisoner. And very soon, every creature in the pit would have to choose a side. The containment failures started shortly after midnight. At first, prison officials assumed it was a technical problem. A damaged sensor. A faulty power relay. Nothing unusual. Then entire monitoring stations went dark. Emergency alarms began sounding across Omega. Red warning symbols flashed on every screen. Overseer Vaughn immediately ordered a full diagnostic. The results made his blood run cold. Something was moving beneath the prison. Something large. Very large. Ancient geological scans of Karen 9 showed a vast network of natural caverns far below Omega. The tunnels had existed long before the Dominion built the prison. For centuries, they had remained unexplored. Now motion sensors deep underground were detecting activity. Massive activity. The readings grew stronger every minute. Meanwhile, Marcus was asleep beside the campfire when the Titan suddenly lifted its head. The giant creature released a low growl. Every monster around the camp reacted instantly. The Razorback Stalker stood up. The Night Shrieker spread its wings. The Cragmore turned toward the darkness. Marcus woke immediately. Years of warfare had taught him to recognize danger. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The monsters weren't acting aggressive. They were acting afraid. That worried him far more. The Titan began moving. Not away from danger. Toward it. Marcus followed. Dozens of creatures followed behind him. The strange procession crossed forests, caverns, and rocky valleys deep within Omega. As they traveled, more monsters joined them. Predators. Hunters. Creatures that normally hated one another. Now they moved together. The cameras tracked everything. Inside the control room, nobody spoke. They were watching an army form. Hours later, the group reached a region of Omega that few cameras covered. An old containment sector abandoned decades earlier. The ground was cracked. Ancient support structures lay broken. Marcus examined the area carefully. Then he noticed something. The cracks were growing. The earth was moving. Suddenly, a section of ground exploded upward. Rock shattered. Steel supports twisted apart. A gigantic creature erupted from beneath the surface. The control room erupted into panic. Nobody had records of this species. Nobody had ever seen it before. The beast was enormous. Far larger than the Titan. Its body resembled a nightmare fusion of insect, reptile, and armored machine. Hundreds of glowing eyes covered its head. Massive claws tore through reinforced stone like paper. And was. It wasn't alone. More creatures emerged behind it. Then more. And more. An entire hidden species had been living beneath Omega. 4 centuries. Unknown. Undetected. Now they were rising. The first underground creature attacked immediately. A thorn beast was ripped apart before it could react. Another monster was dragged underground screaming. The prison alarms shifted from red to black. Maximum extinction level threat. Throughout the facility, evacuation procedures activated. Overseer Vaughn stared at the screens in horror. If the underground swarm reached the surface, not only Omega but the entire prison world could fall. Military reinforcements were weeks away. There was no time. No plan. No solution. Then the cameras found Marcus. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was standing atop a massive rock formation. Below him, hundreds of monsters gathered. The Titan stood on one side. The Cragmore on the other. The night shriekers filled the skies. Every creature was looking toward him. Waiting. The human raised one arm. The monsters fell completely silent. For a moment, even the underground swarm paused. Marcus looked across the battlefield. At the terrified creatures around him. At the nightmare emerging from below. Then he pointed toward the enemy. The response shook the entire prison. Hundreds of monsters roared at once. Not in fear. Not in panic. In unity. In defiance. For the first time in Omega's history, every monster in the pit stood together. And they were preparing for war. The battle began with a roar that echoed through every corner of Karen 9. The underground swarm surged forward like a living tide. Thousands of claws tore through rock and soil. The creatures moved with terrifying speed, overwhelming everything in their path. The first line of Omega's defenders charged to meet them. Razorback stalkers slammed into the enemy ranks. Cragmores crashed forward like armored tanks. Night shriekers dove from above, striking with razor-sharp talons before climbing back into the darkness overhead. The collision shook the ground. From the control room, prison officials watched in stunned silence. Nobody had ever imagined such a sight. The monsters of Omega were fighting together. Not against each other. Against a common enemy. At the center of it all stood Marcus Kane. He wasn't the strongest creature on the battlefield. He wasn't the fastest. But every movement of the defenders seemed connected to him. When one flank began collapsing, Marcus redirected nearby predators to reinforce it. When injured creatures fell back, others moved to protect them. Without realizing it, the monsters had become an army. And Marcus had become its commander. The underground swarm, however, was relentless. For every enemy defeated, 2 more seemed to emerge from the depths. Their giant leader advanced through the battlefield like a walking disaster. The colossal beast crushed defenders beneath its claws. Even the mighty Titan struggled against it. The 2 giants collided with enough force to crack the cavern floor. For several minutes they fought in a storm of claws, scales, and flying debris. Then disaster struck. The Titan was thrown backward. The enormous Guardian crashed into a rock wall and collapsed. A terrible silence spread through the defenders. Their strongest warrior had fallen. The underground leader turned toward Marcus. Hundreds of glowing eyes locked onto him. The swarm immediately changed direction. Every creature began converging on the human. The control room erupted into panic. If they kill him, it's over. He's the only thing holding them together. Even Overseer Vaughn knew it was true. Without Marcus, Omega would descend into chaos. The defenders would lose. The prison world would fall. Deep below, Marcus understood the danger. He looked around. The swarm was closing in. The monsters protecting him were exhausted. Many were wounded. Some had already fallen. For the first time since entering Omega, Marcus wasn't sure they could win. Then he heard a familiar growl. The Titan was standing. Slowly. Painfully. But standing. The giant beast limped toward Marcus and placed itself between him and the advancing swarm. One by one, other creatures joined it. The Razorback Stalker. The Cragmore. The Thorn Beasts. The Night Shriekers. Hundreds of monsters formed a living wall around the human. Marcus suddenly realized something important. They weren't following him anymore. They were choosing him. The difference mattered. Leadership earned through fear vanished when fear disappeared. Leadership earned through trust became something stronger. The underground leader charged. The final attack had begun. Marcus took a deep breath and looked at the defenders around him. Then an idea struck him. A dangerous idea. Possibly a suicidal one. But it might save everyone. He turned toward the deepest tunnel from which the swarm had emerged. The creatures weren't invading randomly. They were protecting something. A nest. A queen. A source. Marcus looked at the Titan. Then toward the dark tunnel. The giant beast seemed to understand. Without hesitation, the Titan lowered itself, offering Marcus a ride. The human climbed onto its back. The defenders opened a path. And together, Marcus and the Titan charged directly into the heart of the swarm. Toward whatever waited in the darkness below. Toward the true ruler of the underground empire. And toward the battle that would decide the fate of Omega forever. The Titan crashed through the swarm like a living fortress. Marcus held tightly to the creature's armored back as they charged deeper into the underground tunnels. Behind them came a small group of Omega's strongest defenders. The Razorback Stalker. The Cragmaw. Several Thorn Beasts. And a squadron of Night Shriekers flying through the vast caverns overhead. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the tunnels became. The walls pulsed with faint blue light. Massive organic structures covered the stone. The entire underground network looked less like a cave system and more like a gigantic living organism. Then Marcus saw it. The nest. It stretched across a cavern so large that the prison city above could have fit inside it. Thousands of eggs covered the floor. And in the center stood the queen. She was enormous. Far larger than any creature Marcus had ever seen. Her body merged with the nest itself. Countless tendrils connected her to the surrounding walls. The underground swarm wasn't invading Omega. It was fleeing. Marcus finally understood. Years of prison construction had unknowingly expanded into the Queen's territory. The vibrations, drilling, and explosions had slowly damaged the nest. Now the Queen believed her entire species was under attack. She had responded the only way she knew how. War. The giant creature fixed hundreds of glowing eyes on Marcus. The swarm gathered around her. Waiting. One wrong move would trigger a massacre. Marcus slowly climbed down from the Titan. The monsters behind him growled nervously. He raised a hand. They stayed back. Then he walked forward alone. Every camera in Omega focused on him. Every guard watched. Every prisoner watched. The entire world held its breath. Marcus stopped a short distance from the Queen. The enormous creature lowered her head. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Marcus pointed upward. Toward the prison above. Toward Omega. Toward the battle. He spoke calmly. No one could hear the words through the cameras. But somehow, the Queen seemed to understand. Not the language. The intent. The truth. Marcus wasn't trying to conquer her. He wasn't threatening her. He was offering peace. A long silence followed. Then something extraordinary happened. The Queen released a low, rumbling call. Throughout the tunnels, the swarm froze. Another call echoed through the underground kingdom. The attacking creatures began retreating. Slowly at first. Then completely. The war was over. Back on the battlefield, stunned defenders watched the enemy withdraw. The underground creatures vanished into the depths. Not defeated. Not destroyed. Simply leaving. Hours later, prison officials entered Omega for the first time since the crisis began. Overseer Vaughn personally led the delegation. When he reached Marcus, the human was sitting beside the recovering Titan. Monsters surrounded him. But none showed hostility. Vaughn stared at the impossible scene. You could have escaped during the battle. Marcus shrugged. Maybe. Why didn't you? Marcus looked around at the creatures. Many were wounded. Many were exhausted. All were alive. Because somebody had to stop the fighting. For a long moment, Vaughn said nothing. Then he gave an order that shocked every officer present. Release him. The guard stared. Sir. Vaughn nodded. The sentence is terminated. Nobody argued. How could they? The human had saved Omega. He had saved the prison. He had probably saved the entire planet. As Marcus walked toward the exit, the monsters gathered behind him. The Titan released a deep rumbling call. Soon dozens of other creatures joined in. The sound spread across Omega. A farewell. A salute. A message. Not to a master. Not to a conqueror. But to a leader. A man thrown into a pit of monsters. A man expected to die. A man who survived because he understood something the galaxy had forgotten. Even monsters will follow those who earn their trust. And 24 hours after being locked away with the deadliest creatures in existence, Marcus Kane walked out as their leader. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more HFY adventures among the stars.